Today, for that segment, we have Ras Iroy, Ras Iyah, and Ras Trust Me. So last week, the Nyahbinghi Theocracy Order Church of His and Her Imperial Majesties, Haile Selassie I and Empress Menen, hosted a week of activities from the 22nd to the 29th of May in celebration of African Liberation Day. This week of activities was centered around the theme, Building Bridges Between Africa and the Caribbean, Connecting the Past, the Present, and the Future. As I said before, we have the pleasure of speaking with Ras Iroy, Ras Iyah, and Ras Trust Me about this. Welcome to Reflections on Good Morning SKN, gentlemen.
Welcome, gentlemen.
Good morning.
All right, so to get the conversations started, Ras Iroy, this one will be directed to you. What is the origin of the African Liberation Day celebration?
Greetings to ones and ones again. The whole origin of the African Liberation Day celebration would have started way back in Accra, Ghana, on the 15th of April in 1958, when it was about 7 or 8 African heads of state came together, dealing with the issues of colonialism, basically saying, hey, this is enough. And then the whole effort of Ghana's independence and the independence of many other states would have led to a even more successful meeting 5 years after, when the African heads of state, about 32 at that time, would have come together and decide, hey, we continuing on this mission. We would have set some objectives as to how we can, number one, celebrate the achievements of our people, look into the present situation, and planning our way forward, how to survive and be successful and avoiding the whole colonial domination which they were facing at the time. So it was really a consolidated effort of heads of states in the African continent to really fight and as much as possible to get rid of colonialism and for Africa to be liberated and be able to carry on its own.
Well, thank you. That's a whole lot of information, and I can see the relevance of it.
So, Ras Iyah, here's my question for you. Can you tell us about the meaning of the team?
Yeah. Basically, so let me emphasize that the team that we received was today of the week activity that just come from the 22nd, 29th, is based on building bridges between Africa and the Caribbean, connecting the past, the present, and the future. And the emphasis is based on how we see now, not just in the Caribbean aspect alone, but the whole entire world of African people in the diaspora and in the continent, because we really find much of our people in the continent and in the diaspora have been finding themselves neglected of the real purpose of African people. And we say this is a way forward now that we mobilize and find ourselves of who we are as a people, binding together the form for unification.
Again, meaningful information indeed, and I can see as well the relevance of that. Ras, trust me, not to leave you out at all. Why don't you tell us about the activities that were held the past week?
Greetings, give thanks. Well, the week of activities started on Sunday down at the market in Sandy Point, where we had some ISIS and shared some information as to the origin of African Liberation Day and how it started and when it started. Then the week continued on Monday, where we had a brief call-in on ZIZ Radio, where we were able to share with the general public as to the activities for the week as well as the theme. On Wednesday, the actual African Liberation Day, we visited 2 primary schools, namely the Irish Town Primary School and the Dr. William Connor Primary School, where we made presentations to the children about African Liberation Day, about the theme, and try to enlighten them a little bit about the day, its origin, and being African. You know what I mean? I, for one, share the phrase, no matter where you come from, as long as you're a black man, you're an African. I even encourage them to end discrimination. You know what I mean? Because all our differences are what makes us special. So not because my hair is longer than yours, or you have straight hair here, my eye is bigger than yours, that don't make you better than me or I better than you. You know, so that was well received. Then in the afternoon, we were part of the issues program on Freedom FM, where we had a discussion surrounding the theme. That also continued on Thursday on ZIZ Radio and Frank and Candid as well, where we had different persons going to share what African Liberation Day means and where and how it came about. Friday, we encourage persons to wear African attire. And on Saturday, we had the grand rally in the Independence Square, where we saw many different presentations, song, dance, poetry, and we had our featured speaker being Brother Juni Libod, who came and made a presentation as the guest speaker for that activity. And the week climaxed in Nevis, where we traveled over to support the One Love Rastafari movement and Nevis for their African Liberation Day on the Sunday at Natural Liberty Farm, which kind of brought the week of activities to a close, which saw the collaboration of both Farai and Nevis and St. Kitts coming together to celebrate and share in African Liberation Day. Give thanks.
Okay, I like the inclusion of Nevis as well. So it wasn't just on St. Kitts alone.
No, it was not on St. Kitts alone. We journeyed over to Nevis to celebrate with the One Love Rastafari movement in Nevis on the Sunday. Great. Because they came over to celebrate with us on the Saturday.
Lovely,
which
okay.
Yeah, so, yeah, we give thanks for that.
Well, I have to say, in listening to you, Ras Iroy, when you talked about the school visits, that resonated with me because when I asked you the question initially, I was curious as to how you would speak about African Liberation Day in a way that students would understand. And yet you said to me, you spoke to them about discrimination. You spoke to them about, you know, the nose and the color of the hair and all of those things that is very important for them to understand now so that we don't go on, you know, they don't grow up to be, let's say, hating one another or feeling that they're better than, and in a way not unified as a people. So I love the way that you express that.
Basically, for my period of time, given time this design data, we are able to see that in Nyahbinghi Theocracy, when we find that at time when the exact event of the 25th of May utilize the climax of celebrating solidarity on the Saturday to the week that fall for the highlight of the event, 24th of May. So we realize that the Chinese and even much of the Caribbean islands don't have African Liberation Day as a holiday in their calendar. And even on the African continent, we only 12 out of all 54 African countries have it as a holiday. So if we say we use this gesture to say, instead of maintaining ourselves just on the actual date of the holiday that fall in the week, instead we utilize the Saturday to impact for the public that they could able to have something to come and go to as a celebration. So that's why the Nyahbinghi
Well, that makes sense because since it's not a holiday, more people would be able to attend on the Saturday. That makes perfect sense
Yeah.
to me. All right, so Ras Iroy, we already know that the final event was an African market day at Natural Liberty Holistic Farm in Nevis. What were some of the highlights from that particular activity?
Yes. The inclusion, of course, is always remarkable, and that we saw in St. Kitts as well. You know, we saw youths, we saw elders, we saw people of different ethnic backgrounds, you know, different races. You had politicians, you had Rasta, you had what we call the bald head, you know, and we saw very much of that in Nevis. Nevis was a little closer knit in terms of the whole settings. There were activities involving the general public in that, you know, there were games of domino, people playing worry, different activities that would have been rooted in the whole African background, our whole history and heritage. We also focus somewhat on a display reflecting the good old days in things that were used in you know, by us as a people, whether on the continent or here in the diaspora. You know, some of the old time housewares and baskets, and the youths were able to see the connection between a goose and an electric iron, you know, just for example. But what was also what stood out a lot for me was really how we had, you know, the different persons playing their roles. You know, we had people from the government, officials. We had people from the government in, you know, officiating in different areas. Okay. We in Nevis, even though the crowd is usually smaller, there's always that cohesion, you know, where the activities are more involved, as opposed to just being able to sit and be entertained. You actually got involved. Nice. And of course, the participation of our brethren from St. Kitts, you know, really made a difference. It's always good when we have that collective.
Okay. Ras Iroy, you mentioned the difference between the iron and the goose. Can you explain that a bit?
The goose was what was used, well, one of the things used back then to iron the clothes. The goose had a receptacle where you actually put coals in. Oh. So you had live fire in your goose, and that fire was transferred to the base, which is the plate that you use and iron your clothes. Yes. Okay. And so you had to be able to use the little hole to adjust the heat and so on. These days, now you just plug your iron into the electrical outlet
and turn the dial.
And turn the dial, you know. And trust me, you know, the goose did a good job.
Okay.
So I heard. Trust me, I've been hearing about the goose for a long time.
The children were amazed, you know. But a lot of them would have been familiar with it. The schools and the community development department and so on do quite a good job of that as well.
Okay, lovely.
Well, I love the fact that you were able to do that, and even the way that you're explaining what happened now, it makes it real, and I can understand why the theme is what it is, because there are connections to be made, and in every facet of, you know, our life and the way that you make those linkages, you can see that, and I love the way that you're including all people from all walks of life in that quest. One final question this goes out to any of you, so who feels free to answer this one. Why do you think it is important for African Liberation Day to be celebrated?
I would like to answer that. I would like to say this here, point blank. African Liberation Day should be celebrated in the all African people, whether in the continent or outside the continent. I would say a quote from one of our pioneers in the liberation struggle, Kwame Nkrumah, said, even though if I was born in Africa, and if I was not born in Africa, I will still consider myself being an African. But the consideration is not that you have to born in Africa. It's about bringing the whole sum of our people and the struggle that we have gone through. And the emphasis that he will bring to, as I like to shine, is that the much unite, being one of us to make sure that African people have an understanding to the world of faith. And that's why we should be able to bring emphasis of celebrating African liberation. Because we